Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. It is June, which means that it's Men's Mental Health Month. Today's video is going to be a little bit different though. I have all these ingredients in front of me. I'm going to be making my favorite pancakes, talking about something a little more important, talking about men's mental health, and hopefully shedding a little bit of light on things that we could maybe be doing collectively to make things better. I didn't really understand the conversation and importance around men's mental health personally until I kind of found myself in a situation feeling a little bit backed into a corner where I was forced to deal with it in a way that was not a very good learning experience, you might say. The long and short of it was, I found myself at some point in a bit of an abusive situation with somebody. I didn't even recognize that it was happening until all of these signs were around me and I couldn't figure out why I was just miserable all the time. If it weren't for the women in my life, I probably would not be as healed from that situation as I am, which is kind of sad on a few different levels because the more I think about it, I personally did not have many men in my life really who were educated themselves enough on men's mental health to have identified the situation that I was in and get me out of a bad situation. So pretty endlessly grateful for all of the really strong women in my life that kind of came to the rescue, and I'm kind of making this video hopefully to become a little bit more of a male figure for anybody else who might be struggling with some mental health things and is a little bit afraid to speak up. I think if it weren't for the women in my life helping me through some of this stuff, I wouldn't be a regular therapy goer. I wouldn't be trying to take care of myself in other holistic ways, but I most importantly wouldn't have even recognized that there was a problem to begin with. Because I've learned that talking through things is a great start, but that's kind of what it is. It's just a start, really. I think a lot of the healing process with mental health requires action, not just words. Talking is a great place to start. I just knew that for myself, I was probably doing a lot more talking than I was actually making an effort to build better habits, getting better sleep, eating better, taking care of my body, and doing things additionally to supplement things like talk therapy. I think another thing that requires action or inaction in a way that maybe some men don't perhaps think about very much is their addiction to the grind set, is kind of the way that I would put it. I know a lot of men who enjoy being productive, you might say, and myself is included in that category, no doubt, but I think that taking the steps to remove yourself from a toxic environment where you might feel yourself getting a little bit close to the edge of insanity from the amount of work that you're doing is a really difficult but necessary step to take for a lot of people. And I say that from experience myself, but also having lots of friends, specifically men, it happens to be the case, that really needed somebody to reach out to them and try and get them away from that grind set. Since becoming a little bit more educated on mental health myself and having a little bit more courage over the years to try and help some friends of mine who are having mental health struggles, I've come to realize that most of them are the kind of people that are currently struggling with their routine and their habits, and they would be waking up at 4 in the morning to go work a 13-hour shift and then go to the gym for 4 hours and then try and do all of their schoolwork on top of it, and they think that that was going to solve their problems, when in reality I think that it might have been perhaps perpetuating some of those problems. And I can kind of see it from a mile away now, because I definitely used to be in that headspace that if I just continued to work as hard as I possibly could, then I could essentially just will out, I could strong arm all of my mental health problems that were kind of catching up to me. And it's scary and uncomfortable, but I have had more than one uncomfortable call with a friend who has felt suicidal, and it's very heavy, but I've learned that becoming very uncomfortable is a pretty good armor to have when it comes to dealing with pretty serious mental health problems. Also, side note, while we're talking about mental health, I actually also have gotten to write a few jingles for commercials for NAMI. So if you ever have seen one of their commercials show up on your television, there's a pretty good chance that I actually produced it. Something that I personally think about a lot because I had to kind of deal with this and learn the hard way is where the line is between healthy accountability and abuse. If my boss is mad at me because I missed a deadline, I don't really think that that's abuse, but if he starts throwing things at my head and telling me how worthless I am every day, it might be a different situation. I also very frequently hear people say that men have gotten a little too soft, and oh my gosh, I would so much rather live in a world that overcorrects towards care than shames men into being silent about those things. Another thing that I hear pretty frequently is that some men just have a higher tolerance for it, which again is just so sad because nobody should be having to tolerate anything. Tolerating any kind of abuse is perpetuating the problem, and I think that a lot of people, especially men that I've found, are quick to agree with that because abuse paints this picture of putting your hands on somebody else, but abuse takes so many different forms, and it's important to be very well versed on what they look like. Mental abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse. So the reason that I'm making pancakes today is because in a weird way, it's like kind of something that I consider to be part of my recovery. My abuser kind of put me in this headspace over time that really made me develop a bad relationship with live music. I would go to shows that I was playing and I would always just be flooded with like anxiety attacks, panic attacks. I was so anxious all the time. I was worried I was gonna mess something up, and if I did, that I was gonna get in not just a little bit of trouble, but like berated or had stuff thrown at me, and it was a bad situation. And so what I've started to do is every time I play a show and I'm feeling kind of anxious about it, the next day I will just wake up and make myself some pancakes, because it's trying to associate something really dark with something really not dark, like pancakes that are slightly undercooked, because I'm kind of a psychopath and that's how I like them. And I'm hopeful that one day I will go to load up the van for a show and I won't be trembling, you know what I mean? But until that day comes, I'm just gonna try to do things to make the situation a little bit better if I can. It sounds really silly, but it really does work. I have other things that I build into my routine that I think are really good for my mental health. Like when I get back from shows really late, like last night, I got in at like 4 a.m. I always sleep on my like really soft couch with like a big nest of blankets and pillows, because I just associate coming home from a long show with those really happy things instead of really bad and scary things. There are a few resources that I wrote down I wanted to shout out, like 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, NAMI, who I mentioned before that I've done some work with, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, HeadsUpGuys.org, and MentalHealth.gov. So I kind of just wanted to make this video to hopefully encourage some of you guys to check in on your friends. I know this isn't my most eloquently worded video. It's a little hard for me to compose my thoughts on it in a neat way, but it is really important to me because I think a lot of people sadly wait until it's a little too late. I am probably going to be dealing with a lot of these side effects from that really bad part in my life for the rest of my life. And it might not be as big of a deal now as it will be in a year or 5 years or 10 years. And maybe I really will have kind of lost track of the feelings that are associated with that part of my life. But I will never forget who was there for me, who was not there for me, what I learned from it, and also how things that I couldn't control were impacting me. I remember probably the thing that I did not anticipate at all about having a kind of serious dark point in my life was just what it would do to my body. I was just dropping weight. I couldn't function normally. I had a lot of other, I guess we'll just say, personal functions with my body that just like kind of stopped working. Like the factory had shut down. I started to even develop a lot of like weird obsessive compulsive things that were going on, and I didn't know why they were happening, and I didn't really get a whole lot of explanation until I was pretty far deep into it. So again, if there's one thing that I would encourage everybody, not just men, to take away from this video, it's that stepping in before things get too bad, or preventative care you might say, is very, very crucial part of the equation that I don't think maybe gets discussed enough, because I don't think most people anticipate that something like this will affect them in their lives. But mental struggles do not care who you are, what you're doing, or what else is happening in your life. It'll just happen whether you want it to or not, and whether you have any say in the matter. So do whatever you can to try and identify these things early. I've read a few good books that I'll kind of link here in the description that I thought were really useful, and I hope that more men feel safe to speak up, not just this month, but hopefully all the time for the rest of their lives and something bad is happening to them. Remember, it's not something that you're just supposed to tolerate. It's something that we're supposed to hopefully combat and be preventative about. And there's no such thing as being too soft. It is simply just the respect that you have to treat yourself with like you would with anybody else. I don't want to be on my teacher bullshit or my armchair philosopher bullshit, but I always like to think about how there's probably somebody in your life that if you saw that they were being mistreated, you would immediately step in like it was your second nature. And that's the respect and attitude that you should be treating yourself especially, but also everybody with, especially those who might feel a little bit too afraid to reach out and say that they need some help. If this video resonated with you or anybody that you might know that you think would enjoy it, please feel free to send it to them, mention that you're thinking of them, and feel free to comment anything below that you think has really improved your mental health, even if it's something simple, like just making your bed. And if anything else, feel free to keep the conversation going, not just in the comments of this video, but in person with all of your friends, especially maybe some men in your life that just need to have somebody say that you can come talk to them whenever you need. Because it's a lot better to know that you're living on the right side of history, building a world where people don't really feel like this is some sort of last resort, but it's just the standard.